So, you're watching GDQ. You think to yourself, that's awesome. No pun intended. I wish I could do that. You probably have even looked up how to get into speedrunning. Maybe that's how you found this video. Needless to say, I'm here to help you learn how to be a Chomps certified speedrunner. Firstly, we'll go over some pros and cons of different types of speed games to help you decide on what type of game you want to learn. Then we'll go over some tips for learning your chosen speed game, as well as some general advice I've accumulated over the years. My name is Chomps, I'm a dinosaur or something. Let's get into it. So, there are two categories I've derived to be as applicable to as many games as possible, because there's no way for me to really know what game you have in mind. Firstly, the length of the run, and secondly, the popularity of the game. Let's go over a category that not a lot of people think about, the duration of the run. Here are some of the benefits of a shorter game. Firstly, they don't require a massive time investment. You can hop in even if you only have like 10 free minutes and try a run. Secondly, they allow you to restart without losing a massive amount of time. If you're new to speedrunning, sometimes there are tricks that are incredibly risky, and if you fail, it can slow you down by minutes at a time. In that case, some people just opt to restart. If you're an hour into a run, you might as well just finish it out instead of restarting, but if you're only 5 minutes into a run and the speedrun's short, you have more options and you can opt to restart if you want. Thirdly, they allow you to practice more often. This one might sound weird, but if a game is shorter and you put in the same amount of time and effort, you will be better at tricks than in a longer game. You sort of have more time to refine and practice what is needed. Fourthly, and finally, they allow you to take breaks in between runs. Sometimes playing one game at your best for an hour straight mentally drains you a bit. Speedrunning is as much mental as it is physical, and giving yourself a break is a huge advantage. There are tons of advantages and disadvantages, but let's just move on to the cons for now. First con of playing a shorter game is they're usually heavily optimized. If you don't know what that means, an optimized game basically means that the best players are fighting for milliseconds. Everyone has found the best strategies, and it's just a matter of practice and dedication. What this means is the difference between players at the top of the leaderboards is usually negligible, and progress seems very slow even for players much lower on the rankings. Second con is mistakes are punished quite heavily. In a speedrun that only takes 5 minutes, losing a second can be a huge problem. This ties back into our optimization problem. Less time to spare, more ouchies. Third, they can be very glitch or trick intensive. Especially for a new player, it can be incredibly daunting. Some of you, though, might be excited by the prospect of dozens of cool new tricks and glitches to learn. It's completely dependent on you and the game. So, we've gone over the pros and cons of a short speedrun. Let's look at the flip side, a long speedrun. The first advantage of a long speedrun is they allow you to make more mistakes. This is the antithesis of our previous point. Because the run is long, messing up a trick doesn't matter because you can always make up the time later. Secondly, they are typically less optimized, which we've already talked about previously. Third, they typically have multiple routes. If you don't know what a route is, it's essentially the path that you take to complete the game. In long speedruns, and especially very long speedruns, the order in which you complete things doesn't matter as much, and allows you to take your time, do whatever you want. Now let's look at the disadvantages for a long game. They take a long time. Duh, right, but seriously. This is a serious drawback for some people. Maybe you live with your family, and they come in and ask for your help a lot or something. Maybe a 4-hour speedrun wouldn't be a good idea because you'd have to drop it halfway through a decent amount of the time. Or maybe you work, but you're on call and you don't know when you're going to go in next. It's not a deal breaker for most, but it certainly is something you have to take into consideration. Secondly, they sometimes take longer to learn. This isn't always true. Some short games are jam-packed with hard-to-learn tricks or weird or wacky glitches, but a long game usually takes a while to learn. However, it sometimes is easier because the tricks are more spread out over a longer period of time. It's completely dependent on the game, but generically, I would say that it is true. Third and finally for the advantages of a long speedrun are tricks and glitches that can ruin a run are absolutely brutal. Some games have tricks that, if you fail them, can cost you full minutes trying to recover. In long speedruns, this can be bad, especially if they're towards the end of the run. Look at Dampe in Ocarina of Time. If you don't know about it, it's basically a very RNG dependent section of the run, something we'll talk about later. It comes very late in the run, and even the best runs in the world can fall below the Gravedigger's feet. Well, now let's go over a different category entirely, the popularity of the run. You might be thinking, why is this even a prevalent subject? Well, it changes how you learn the speed game fundamentally. You can't learn an unpopular game the same way you do a popular game. It's an important thing to note. Let's go over some advantages of a popular game. The first and biggest advantage of a popular game is there are tons of guides and walkthroughs. Let's use an example, Ocarina of Time, a pretty popular game and a funny one to watch. There have to be thousands of text and video guides made for this game. The people whose path you're following have already carved the way for you. Secondly, there already are optimal routes. Especially if the game has been out for a while, people have already hammered out the most efficient way to do things. This means there's a clear path and trajectory for you to learn and clear your goals. Thirdly, they have a huge community to watch, converse with, and be a part of. This one doesn't require much explanation. With the rise of Discord, internet communities have sprung up like never before. People who share your passions and hobbies are a few clicks away. Unless you're antisocial like me, then we just lurk. Now, the downsides of a popular game. They force you to compete with thousands of other people. Some people focus on the leaderboards a lot, something we'll talk about later. These people are going to be incredibly disheartened to find that there are thousands of runs in their game already submitted. Because of this, unless you're one of the best, it's really hard to stand out, although a leaderboard shouldn't be your goal anyway. Secondly, these games are already incredibly optimized. Those are the main disadvantages of a popular game, but how about we go over the advantages of an unpopular game? Luckily, we can zoom through this because a lot of this is the inverse of things we've already covered, and redundancy sucks. So, the pros of an unpopular game. They require you to compete with only a handful of people. Secondly, the community they do foster is much more niche and tightly knit. Thirdly, they let you discover your own routes and just have fun with it. Now, let's go over some cons, or rather, the main con that I want to focus on. There are few guides to an unpopular game, if any. This one's pretty self-explanatory, but I want to put emphasis on it regardless. Without guides or a large community to help you, sometimes it can feel like you're in the weeds or stuck. I personally actually enjoy this, as finding my own routes is fun, although some people definitely hate it, and I understand why. Okay, we're through the pros and cons section. Congratulations, you've won even more video to watch. Obviously, the aforementioned categories aren't the only important things when you're deciding a game, and there are plenty of other things you should take into consideration. An example of this is the game reliant on RNG? RNG stands for a random number generator. It's the randomness that a speedrun game offers, like Dampe in the previous example, or Minecraft. It's an incredibly RNG reliant game. Some other things to consider are, is the game very trick intensive? Is it fun to watch? Do you already enjoy the game casually? There are dozens of other questions you can ask yourself, and I can't answer these questions for you. You should come to your own conclusions of what you think you would like or not like about a certain game. I hope I've at least helped you decide a little bit. So, you've chosen a game to speedrun. If you haven't, just think of a game. The first thing you should do is go to speedrun.com, find your chosen game, and there should be a little section called Guides, and if you click on it, it should take you to a list of text or video guides depending on what the community prefers. You might be saying, wait, what the heck is glitchless? Well, these are called categories. A category is essentially a set of rules that you follow. For example, any percent means you can do whatever the heck you want, there's no rules. But glitchless means you can't use glitches, or if you can, they should be listed in the rules section on speedrun.com. Get the heck out there and look up your game, start watching tutorials, and start watching runs. I would recommend taking notes of your own, especially if you're playing a long game. Speaking of recommendations, let's go through some of my general advice. Firstly, don't let yourself get discouraged. A few bad runs aren't the end of the world. Secondly, don't force yourself to play. You can take breaks, this is supposed to be fun. Third, don't look at the leaderboards too much. Speedrunning is about your personal growth, not who you're better than or worse than. Fourth, to submit a run you have to record it, so you might as well look back on it later, or maybe even share it online or with your friends. 5, make sure to support whatever community you do join. Talk to them and seek help when you need it, and make sure to help others. We're through. If you've made it this far, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Video making and speedrunning have both been passions of mine for a super long time. I really hope to help you in some way. If there's anything else I can do, say so down in the comments. This is also one of my first videos in this format, so criticism is welcomed. If you're a new speedrunner, I'd also love to see some of your runs. Tell me more about them in the comments. But that's all I got for you now. Good luck with your runs.